The courtroom was packed. The air was thick with tension, like everyone could sense that something was wrong, deeply wrong. Jordan Ellis, a 32-year-old black man with no criminal record, stood shackled before a judge whose gavel had long become a weapon rather than a tool of justice. His mother sobbed quietly in the back row. His young daughter clutched her grandmother's hand, eyes wide, not fully understanding, but knowing something wasn't right. The judge leaned forward, lips curling into what could only be described as a smirk. "Mr. Ellis," the judge began, "you can save your words. I've made my decision." Jordan looked up, confused. His attorney, Sandra Hill, a sharp and unshakable black woman in her 40s, stood frozen. They hadn't even finished presenting their defense. "You're going to jail," the judge said coldly. A gasp echoed through the courtroom. But then, the doors at the back creaked open. Everyone turned. A figure entered, calm, collected, and unexpected. The bailiff stepped forward to block him, but the man held up a badge and a photograph. And just like that, the tide began to shift. Flashback. 1 week earlier, Jordan Ellis was a delivery driver, just trying to make a living. On April 3rd, he was in the wrong neighborhood at the wrong time. A break-in had been reported in a high-end suburban community outside Atlanta. Security footage showed a tall black man near the house. That was enough. Police picked Jordan up 3 blocks away. No tools, no stolen goods, no priors. Just his phone, a delivery manifest, and a half-eaten sandwich. He thought it would be cleared up in an hour. It wasn't. Instead, he was charged with felony burglary. The judge denied bail, due to risk of flight. He'd been sitting in a holding cell for 22 days, his life unraveling. Sandra Hill knew the case was flimsy. The footage was grainy. The timestamps didn't match. And her client had GPS data proving he was 2 blocks away doing a food drop. But the prosecutor, a smug assistant DA named Robert Hayes, was relentless. "We don't need perfect clarity," Hayes said. "We have enough for a conviction." Sandra's voice shook with fury. "You have an assumption. And a black man standing in your courtroom." But the judge didn't care. Sandra suspected bias from day one. During voir dire, he rejected all but 1 black juror. He rolled his eyes whenever Sandra spoke. He even chuckled, when Jordan tried to explain his innocence. "Of course you're innocent," the judge had said. "You people always are." The courtroom clerk flinched. But no one said anything. By day 3 of the trial, Sandra had built a solid defense. She had timeline evidence, character witnesses, even a coworker ready to testify Jordan was on a phone call during the alleged time of the crime. But then the judge started cutting her off. "Move it along," he kept saying. "We don't need your soapbox." And then, without letting Sandra call her final witness, the judge abruptly announced they were ready for closing arguments. That's where part 1 began. Back in the courtroom, Sandra stood and objected. "Your Honor, this isn't procedure. We still have 1 more witness on the list." "Overruled," the judge snapped. "Court rules permit discretion." My court, my call." Jordan looked at Sandra in panic. She glanced toward the public benches, empty save for his mother and daughter. No surprise witnesses. No cavalry. Just silence. The judge raised his gavel, ready to close the case and seal Jordan's fate, when the courtroom doors opened. Enter the man with the badge. He walked in like he owned the place. Dressed in plain clothes, carrying a brown leather satchel and a badge clipped to his belt. "Sorry to interrupt, Your Honor," the man said, ignoring the bailiff. "But you're about to send an innocent man to prison." The judge's eyes narrowed. "Who the hell are you?" The man opened his badge. "Detective Miles Carter. Internal Affairs. Atlanta Metro." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. He handed a manila folder to the bailiff. "I've got evidence that this court needs to see." "Now." Sandra stepped forward. "Your Honor, I request a recess to review this new evidence." "Denied," the judge growled. "I don't know who you think you are. I think I'm someone who just spoke to your court reporter's boss," Carter said coolly. "And someone who got this footage pulled from a traffic camera near the crime scene." He turned to the jury. The man who committed the burglary that night? He had a limp. Mr. Ellis here does not. And the footage shows the real suspect, clearly. The judge looked rattled for the first time. This is not protocol, but justice is, Sandra said, seizing the moment. And you're standing in the way of it. The bailiff handed the folder to the clerk. The judge stared at it like it was poison. We'll take a 10-minute recess, he muttered. But as Sandra approached Detective Carter, he leaned in and whispered, This goes deeper than one bad judge. Much deeper. She froze. Deeper how? She asked. He glanced around and said just 2 words before walking away. Police cover-up. As the gavel echoed through the courtroom, Judge Ronald Hayes leaned back, arms crossed, an unshakable smirk pulling at the corners of his lips. Mr. Crawford, I think we've heard enough, he said with chilling finality. You're going to jail. The room went deathly silent. Jordan's heart thudded like a war drum. His lawyer, Denise Morgan, a seasoned public defender who had battled dozens of wrongful accusations, stood up slowly. Her eyes didn't blink. She turned her head to the prosecution's table, then calmly stepped forward. Your Honor, she said, voice steady but urgent. Before you render your sentence, there's one more piece of evidence you haven't seen. Judge Hayes scoffed. Counselor, the trial is over. You had your chance. Respectfully, she countered, pulling a thin folder from her bag. This new testimony came in after closing arguments. It's from a witness who claims to have been on the scene the night Mr. Crawford was arrested. Hayes narrowed his eyes. Why wasn't this brought forward earlier? She feared retaliation, Denise replied. But she's here now. A murmur rose in the gallery. People shifted, craning to see. From the back, a young woman stood. Slim, with braids down her back and a tremble in her walk. She looked terrified, but determined. The judge sighed. Fine. But make it quick. The woman approached the stand. State your name, Denise asked. I'm Layla James, she said, voice barely above a whisper. Were you present on the night of February 13th at Della's diner? Yes. Tell the court what you saw. Layla swallowed hard. I saw Jordan Crawford outside the diner. He was helping an older man whose car broke down. He didn't go inside, didn't break in, didn't rob anyone. I remember because the older man was my grandfather. Gasps erupted. The prosecutor leapt to his feet. Objection! We don't know this woman. This could be a setup. Judge Hayes held up a hand. Continue, Miss James. Layla pulled out her phone. I recorded part of it. I didn't mean to get involved, but when I saw he got arrested on the news, I felt sick. I knew it wasn't right. Denise turned toward the screen. Your Honor, this video has a timestamp. It shows Mr. Crawford nowhere near the scene at the time of the robbery. The judge paused. For the first time, he looked uncertain. He reviewed the video silently. The courtroom was so quiet, even a pin hitting the floor would have sounded like thunder. When the clip ended, he leaned forward, glaring at Layla, then Jordan, then Denise. This complicates things. Your Honor, Denise said quickly, this should be more than enough to dismiss the charges. Or at the very least, grant a retrial. No, the judge said slowly. Not yet. This is too convenient. We need to verify the authenticity of this video, Denise protested. But, he slammed the gavel. Court is adjourned for today. Bailiffs, escort Mr. Crawford back to holding. The air was sucked out of the room. Jordan turned around, stunned, eyes meeting Layla's. She mouthed, I'm sorry. But Denise wasn't done. Outside the courtroom, she was already on her phone. Get me the digital forensics team. I want every frame of that video verified. And I want to know why Judge Hayes is stalling. Hours later, while Jordan sat behind bars wondering if he'd ever taste freedom again, Denise dug deeper. Her contacts uncovered something disturbing. A retired clerk who once worked under Judge Hayes emailed her a sealed file. In it were names, cases, all with similar patterns, young black men, harsh sentences, questionable evidence, all under Judge Hayes. Denise's hands shook as she scrolled. This goes deeper than we thought. The next morning, Denise arrived at the courthouse with new fire in her stride. Jordan was brought in, looking tired, but there was hope in his eyes. Layla was there again, this time with her grandfather. And something else caught everyone's attention. A tall man in a dark suit entered the courtroom. He didn't sit. He just stood quietly near the back, watching. Judge Hayes entered the room and immediately noticed the man. His posture stiffened. "Who is that?" he demanded. Denise stood up, straight-faced. "That, Your Honor, is the new federal oversight attorney sent by the Department of Justice. And he's here to investigate you." The entire courtroom erupted. Judge Hayes stood, furious. "This is outrageous. You're trying to smear me." But the DOJ official stepped forward calmly. "Judge Hayes, your record has raised multiple red flags. If you continue this trial, every decision you've made will be under the microscope." Hayes' face turned red. He turned to Denise. "This is a circus." "No, Your Honor," she said firmly. "This is justice." Hayes stared at her for a long moment, then turned his gaze toward Jordan. His jaw clenched. But before anyone could speak again, the courtroom doors burst open. A young man stumbled in, bruised, breathless, holding a duffel bag. "Wait!" he shouted. The bailiffs moved to intercept him, but the man dropped the bag and raised his hands. "I was there. I was part of it. Jordan didn't do anything." The gallery went into chaos. Judge Hayes stood frozen. The man's eyes locked on Jordan. "He saved my dad's life that night. He had nothing to do with the robbery. I swear to God." Denise turned to him. "Who are you?" "I'm the guy who actually robbed that diner. And I can prove it." The courtroom, still reeling from the shocking retraction by the primary witness, hadn't even begun to process what was happening when the door creaked open again. This time, a woman, mid-30s, with a calm but firm stride, walked straight into the courtroom without hesitation. Her gaze was fixed on the judge. "Your Honor," she said, voice steady but heavy with implication. "My name is Vanessa Carter, and I believe the court has made a grave mistake." The murmurs surged again like a rising tide. The judge furrowed his brow. "Miss Carter, are you representing someone?" "No," she replied, slowly scanning the courtroom before resting her eyes on Jordan. "I'm here because I was there that night." Gasps erupted. The prosecutor leapt from his chair. "Objection, Your Honor! This is highly irregular. This woman was not on the witness list." The judge pounded his gavel again. "Order! Miss Carter, do you understand the seriousness of this claim?" "I do," she answered, stepping forward. "I've been afraid to speak, but after watching this trial, and after hearing what the first witness just did, I can't stay silent." Jordan's mother clutched his arm tightly, eyes wide. Jordan himself felt like the air had been sucked from the room. "Who was this woman?" "Approach the bench," the judge ordered, voice trembling slightly now. "She did." Whispered words exchanged. The judge's eyes widened. Whatever she was saying, it hit like a bombshell. After a tense moment, he nodded gravely and leaned into his microphone. "This court will take a brief recess. Miss Carter will be sworn in and deposed immediately." The tension in the courtroom was thick enough to slice through. As the judge exited, Jordan turned to his lawyer. "Do you know who she is?" he asked. His lawyer shook his head. "No." "But from the judge's face?" "She's important. This could be our break." Back in the holding room, the defense team questioned Vanessa Carter. What she revealed turned the entire narrative on its head. She had worked late the night of the alleged crime. As she walked to her car, she saw a group of young men, none of them Jordan, arguing loudly with the alleged victim near the gas station. One of them shoved the man. Another pulled something from his coat. But as she approached, they fled. She remembered the shirt the man wore. She remembered the street lamp flickering behind them. And most importantly, she remembered the face of the one who actually assaulted the man. It wasn't Jordan. She'd gone home, scared, afraid that speaking up might get her targeted. But when the story made the news, She had recognized Jordan's face and known something was wrong. "I know what I saw," she told the lawyer. "He's innocent." The court reconvened. The atmosphere had changed. Vanessa Carter's calm, composed testimony contradicted nearly every claim the prosecution had made. The judge sat stiffly, lips drawn tight. Jordan, still in shackles, was holding on to the last thread of hope he had left. Then something unexpected happened. The judge addressed the bailiff. "Please bring the previous witness back into the courtroom." Everyone blinked. The young man who had recanted his testimony earlier was escorted back in. He looked nervous. The judge turned to him. "Sir, you stated that you were pressured into lying. Who pressured you?" The boy hesitated. Sweat trickled down his temple. "My brother," he mumbled. "Speak up," the judge said sharply. "My older brother. He told me if I didn't say Jordan did it, I'd regret it." The courtroom gasped. Jordan's lawyer shot up from his seat. "Your Honor, this confirms intimidation. I move for immediate dismissal. Sit down," the judge snapped. "This court will decide based on due process." But his hands trembled. For the first time, he looked unsure. Rattled. Human. And just when it seemed like everything was turning around, the door creaked open once more. This time, it wasn't another witness. It was a man in a federal agent's jacket, flanked by 2 officers. He approached the bench quietly, handed the judge a folder, and whispered something in his ear. The judge read the file. His face grew pale. "What is this?" the prosecutor barked, standing. "Who is that?" The judge didn't respond at first. Then he leaned into the mic. "This court is now in possession of new surveillance footage. Footage that had been withheld from the defense, and possibly this court, by law enforcement." The courtroom exploded. "New footage?" Jordan's lawyer asked. "Yes," the judge said. "It shows the events of that night from across the street. The footage appears to clearly identify the true perpetrator." "Then this is over," someone shouted from the back. But the judge raised his hand. "Not yet. There's more. This file also contains a list of names of individuals who deliberately obstructed justice in this case." He looked up, and for the first time, he looked afraid. As the crowd gasped and the federal agent turned toward the prosecution table, Jordan's eyes narrowed. Something deeper was unraveling here. Bigger than just his case. This wasn't just a trial anymore. It was a takedown. The room was frozen in time. The silence following the surprise witness's testimony hung in the air like thunder after a lightning strike. Judge Halverson, once so smug and confident, now sat visibly shaken, the gavel in his hand trembling ever so slightly. Everyone's eyes were fixed on him, waiting. The surprise witness, Pastor Elijah Turner, had just dropped a truth bomb no one saw coming. He had proof that Marcus Williams wasn't even at the scene of the alleged crime, and the real perpetrator. Someone connected to the judge's own circle. Flashback. A seed of injustice. It turned out that Elijah had once been part of the same community as Marcus and had been collecting evidence for years, documenting the racial profiling and systemic targeting of young black men in their city. He knew Marcus was just the latest victim in a long, ugly pattern. The court listened intently as Elijah presented an old security recording from a neighboring business, a hidden angle never submitted into evidence. It clearly showed Marcus in a different part of town at the exact time the crime was supposedly committed. Gasps filled the room. The prosecutor fumbled her papers. The defense attorney, Ms. Renee Clark, stood straighter, her eyes gleaming with a fire she had held back for hours. The jury looked among themselves, stunned. "And the judge?" He tried to interrupt. "This court is not a place for theatrics," Judge Halverson barked. But Renee wouldn't let up. "Your Honor, this footage was withheld. Someone in law enforcement or prosecution suppressed this evidence. This is no longer just a case of wrongful accusation, it's a deliberate act of injustice." The courtroom shifts, tension gripped every corner of the courtroom. Pastor Elijah handed over the original digital files to the court clerk. Renee pushed forward, demanding a full investigation into prosecutorial misconduct. Marcus sat motionless, gripping the sides of his chair, tears forming in his eyes. His mother, seated behind him, sobbed softly, her hands clasped in silent prayer. Then it happened. As the judge reviewed the video again, the courtroom doors flung open. Another figure walked in. Dressed in a sharp suit, his badge flashing briefly under his blazer, Special Agent Denise Hall from the FBI's Civil Rights Division. "Your Honor," she announced, "we've been following irregularities in this district for a while. And after reviewing preliminary evidence in this case, we're placing the lead detective, Detective Carl Benson, under federal investigation for falsifying reports and obstructing justice." Gasps again. Murmurs turned into chaos. Fallout begins. Detective Benson, sitting near the back, attempted to leave but was quickly handcuffed by 2 federal officers. His eyes locked with Marcus's, and for the first time, fear replaced his usual arrogance. Judge Halverson's face paled. He knew. He knew the dominoes were about to fall, and that he was standing far too close. The gallery erupted into quiet celebration, people hugging, crying, whispering prayers of thanks. Renee rose. "Your Honor, in light of the new evidence, I request all charges against Mr. Williams be dropped immediately." There was no fighting it now. The judge looked down, defeated. "Case dismissed. Mr. Williams, you're free to go." The courtroom exploded into applause. Marcus rose slowly, stunned. "Free? After all this time?" His mother rushed forward, embracing him as reporters flooded outside to relay what just happened. Aftermath. The new fight. Later that week, Renee Clark and Pastor Elijah appeared on a local talk show, speaking on the broader injustice, calling for reforms, accountability, and a system that protects rather than persecutes. Marcus, now free, stood on the steps of the courthouse. He had a message. "This isn't just about me. It's about every black man who didn't have someone walk through that door for them. We're coming for change, and we won't stop. In a world where injustice often hides in plain sight, truth has a strange way of surfacing, especially when the right voices refuse to stay silent." Marcus's story is one of survival, courage, and the power of one surprise witness to change everything. But now we ask you, do you believe this judge should be investigated? Was justice really served? Or is this just the beginning? How many other Marcus Williams are still out there, waiting? Let's talk about it in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss our next jaw-dropping story. This is Crime Vault, where silence is broken and justice speaks.